Hey, what's happening, guys? I'm here on a beautiful day in Boston, Massachusetts. If you've never been, it is absolutely gorgeous place. And I love summer here in Boston. I just love it. Just walking around here near my brother's house, taking the dog out. And I wanted to talk about something that I think is deceptively important. And it's difficult to title. And it's something that, yeah, I guess it's something that's never been said. So I'll try my best here. A lot of guys will say that they don't read the news. They'll say, I'll ask them something about something, and they'll say, well, I don't read the news, I gave up on the news. It wasn't, it was this, that, it was divisive, this and that, and, fear mongering or whatever. And, I understand that. I totally understand that. In fact, I've been frustrated with the news, U.S. news, since the 80s, actually. I started to watch French and German news, Israeli news, back in 87 when I went to Paris the first time. And I saw international newspapers like the Herald Tribune. But what we're talking about here is guys who, and I think a lot of guys on the channel too, probably have struggled with this one. Is like, what do? I read these news. It's inflammatory. It's kind of like one of my friends, Robert, said, it's just which poison do you want to drink, right? Do you want to drink the liberal poison or the Republican poison? And so a lot of reasons is I find a lot of guys, and women too, but especially I hear guys saying that they don't read the news anymore. And they're serious, like they really don't read the news. And it's actually a more complicated topic than I thought. I made a earlier episode and I realized it just wasn't right. So this is going to be incorporating everything I realized since then. I got rid of my television. I threw away my television about, probably 13 years ago, something like that. Because I heard everybody saying, like, oh, I don't watch the TV, and TV's not good for you. And I thought, yeah, but I go to their house and everybody has TVs and they watch them. Even though they talk all this shit. It's kind of like guys who say they don't jerk off. They still jerk off, right? So I'm like, I don't like this type of thing that is just this insidious thing that you never, you fight against, but it never works. And you're always kind of like going at it again, and it's just never working. This is why I don't like this. I don't watch the news thing, is that it's kind of impossible. It's impossible to not know, not be concerned with what's going on in the world. And if it is possible, it's even worse. So I'll go into that too. So, okay, realizations about the news. I guess I'll start in 87 when I went to Paris. And I went to Paris and my sister was living there. And I saw the Herald Tribune. And it was a French international newspaper. And it was really great because it didn't have any of the news that I was used to. It was just information. It felt to me like, I don't know, maybe like real news. That's what it felt like real journalism. And I really enjoyed that. I was so grateful. I was so grateful for that, just to see news that didn't spike my emotions. It wasn't designed to like screw me up, essentially. And so I read the Herald Tribune for many, many years. I would, whenever I had a chance, I'd go to the, if I couldn't get it like in person, I'd go to like a 5-star hotel. They often have it in the gift shop back then. And it was a thin paper too, because how much news can you really read, right? You can't read that much. It was a thin paper. It just basically had important news. And I guess the big thing was it was international. And by 87, I was already traveling, and I was like, man, like Americans are so, country centric, just like only about America. I'm like, geez, the world's so big and the things are so important around the world. I'm going to start reading this other news. And I think a lot of my perspective, a lot of my world traveling, a lot of my perspective, a lot of my ability to make friends, to be social, to lead groups internationally. I hired and led a group of 100 Chinese salespeople at a company in China. And it was very exciting. And I think a lot of this ability to talk to foreigners, ability to be social, to be part of the flow of society or something, came from that reading international news. Where I'm not the American who just has only one idea about your country. So for example, most people meet a French person and the only thing they either know is French food, or they know what they think they know, what happened in World War II. And neither one is really true. Like, French food is not usually what you consider French food. Most French food is basically what I call French country food, and what happened in World War II is often very different from what people think they know. And the same thing with the, Ireland, leprechauns, this type of thing, right? This is what happens. This is the limited perspective that you have when you don't read international news, and you don't know where people are coming from. I often read about, like, people will say, oh, you're racist because, I'll hear people calling each other racist because they don't care about a bombing in some country or something, right? Well, I say, like, who cares about a bombing? I mean, I care about a bombing, but I care more about the people. Like, what's their history? What's, what are they concerned about? Like, where are they at? Like, okay, you read about a bombing. Oh, well, then you know about the people, right? You're a good person. You're a great person. You fucking know about one bombing. So fucking what? That's like knowing about the Boston bombing, That's all you know. You don't know about Boston people. You don't know where they live. You don't know what they do. You don't know what they eat. You don't know the way they think. You don't know the Boston mentality. When you meet a Boston person, you're just going to talk about the Boston bombing. So there's no simple solution to what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is being educated on what is going on in the world and how things really work. And one of the hard things, I think, for people is that they find out that they don't always work the way they thought, and that, like, let's say they have a perspective that America's evil type perspective, right? And then they find out that when they really start reading, they find out that, America's done a lot of good things, and that's not easy to take. Don't underestimate that. Don't underestimate that. It's very difficult to take mentally, emotionally, ego-wise, And let's think about the other one, where you think America is great, and then you find out a lot of things about different wars, and it's much more complex than just one sentence. I mean, I've spent my life studying the world, and I feel like I can talk on a lot of topics and really go in depth on a lot of different topics. And a lot of it comes from what I'm talking about today. It's this open-mindedness to information, this open-mindedness to people, and it's this constant updating. Like, I read every day. I read like crazy. I read a lot of news, and I watch a lot of YouTube channels, news channels also, these days. And YouTube, I really like YouTube. I like audio learning, as you guys might know. And so I do watch a lot of YouTube news, but I don't watch... I want to give you my perspective on this, okay? And take it for what it's worth. Maybe you're going to agree with it. Maybe you'll find it helpful. Maybe you won't. So I'll just tell you basically, I realize making this video, the only way I can do it is just tell you what I do. So I watch, currently I watch like a lot of Indian news channel. So India, WION, and that's on YouTube. And I watch a couple other YouTube channels, Indian channels. I just feel like Indian news, it's in English. And its perspective is important because I love India. I've been to India. I've spent 4 months in India. I bought a motorcycle. I drove south to north for 4 months, surfed all over the place, went to the desert, went to Pakistan, took a camel safari. I just really traveled in India. I love India, but it's even more than that, because right now, as China declines, India is really rising. India is really... At the moment, okay, this could change, but like at the moment, India is becoming quite an important place. It's really geopolitically, everybody's putting their chips into India's basket. Everybody's betting on India right now. So it's happening. So I do read news that is kind of like, because I have a good background of kind of general topics, right? What's Lebanon really like? What do the people do there? Who are they? This is the kind of thing. I have a good background now, so I like to keep up on what kind of the trends at the moment, and especially when you're talking about a big trend, because China is right now undergoing like some major changes. Japanese firms are leaving. China's freaking out, basically internally, not externally, but and they don't know what to do, and like people are, honestly, the global supply chain and China as the world's factory is unraveling as we speak, and it's a very, very interesting development. It is very interesting. It's absolutely fascinating, and this is why I say another reason why you should read the news, and is because the true stories are better than the fake stories. Like the story that of real things is always better than a written story. Well, I shouldn't say always. I'm going to say like maybe 98%. There's 2% of written stories and novels, fiction, that is just absolutely mind-boggling, and I don't even know how the people are so incredibly talented to write that stuff. But that aside, most stories are bad. The real story is always better. Like studying the physics of this water, how this water is underground here and how it comes out of here, the speed and all this, and how things work, and how the whole, the moon pulls the water. That's why it's full moon now. That's why it's so low tide. And how that, how all these things, like how people measured the distance from the earth to the sun, almost to the meter, before we even had telescopes, and how all these things, how the world works it's really the most interesting thing. Because here's the thing, a lot of people are bored in their lives, right? They're bored. But the only way to really relieve boredom is to find something that is truly fascinating. That's the only way. You can't do a short-term way, because boredom is like one of these insidious things, it just comes back. I find fascination in the world, in its people, in its physics, in its history, and the news is a big part of that. The news and what's going on, like daily occurrences, they're huge. Okay. Here's another perspective on the news. When I first learned a language, okay, so when I first learned Japanese, I got pretty good, right? I was studying really hard. I got pretty good in Japanese, and at the time I didn't like pop music at all. I wasn't into pop music, and I almost could look down on it, and also pop television, all that kind of pop culture kind of thing. The whatever, the Lady Gaga kind of type stuff. I just didn't have any interest in that, and so of course I didn't have any interest in Japanese Lady Gaga, because every country has their own everything. Really, they all do. Everybody's got an Arnold Schwarzenegger. Everybody's got Lady Gaga. Everybody's got Madonna. Everybody's got. And once there's a model for something for media, that somebody takes that place. In fact, it's so bad that, like, when Japan had some very colorful journalists and TV personalities, right? And they would wear like yellow glasses and certain hats and certain color hair and everything, and they talked a certain way. They had a certain attitude about life. And what was interesting was when China first started doing like broadcast news, I was there, and it was funny because they copied the exact personality and clothing of Japanese media. And it was very interesting. So watching the news in that sense, like I watched a lot of news when I was studying Japanese, right? Just because the news is good because it has a lot of topics, right? Different topics. It's like 2 minutes on this, 1 minute on that. It just goes topic after topic. And that's very good for getting fluent, right? So to finish the story here, I was studying Japanese and I was getting very good. And I would sit there and I would talk to people, and I remember thinking like something's missing. Like my friend Steve, who we met in Atlanta, his Japanese is better than mine. His Japanese is really good. And I mean, he's just smoking. Like he speaks Korean too. It's just unbelievable. I don't know if he heard it when he's younger or what, but somehow he's just got this, he's really got it down. And so I remember watching him, and he was like, he'd be talking to the Japanese people about popular culture basically, and music and stuff. And I was like, oh, I don't know about this. So I would like, basically not talk for a while. And then at some point I realized, I thought, I kind of, like if I really want to, we're far enough away from the houses. I think we can do this. This beach, they don't let us do the no dog, no leash. But today is like so low tide, it's unbelievable. Usually the water goes almost up to that wall there. Crazy. So anyway, so Steve would be talking about, celebrities and things like that. And he was having so much fun, and the Japanese were like really into it, like they'd be laughing with him and joking, and I was kind of like sitting on the side, like not knowing what's going on, just basically being mute. And I realized that my Japanese was boring because I didn't know what people think about. Yeah, Bruno, yeah, get in there. Oh yeah, and get in the water too. Yeah, get dirty. So I, at that moment, I realized that, I had kind of a boring perspective. Like I mean, I wouldn't say I was a boring guy, but I mean, like, if you don't know what's going on, there's only so far that you can go, like in talking to people. If you don't know what's going on with, let's say music or history or politics or earthquakes or that kind of thing, the thing that's in the news, the stuff that's in the news, right? If you don't know that, there's only so far that you can fucking talk to people. Like, okay, here's the thing. You can say, okay, I'm not going to read the news because it bothers you, because you're not able to handle it. By the way, I'm going to teach you a way that you can handle it. That'll give you a way that you can handle it in this video. And it really benefits you. It really does. So I realized that Steve could talk to people about any topic, right? Where did he dump? I got to pick that up. And so I said, okay, gosh dang it. I'm like, I don't want to study Japanese pop music because I considered it really terrible and it wasn't very good. And, I'm like, this sucks. This Japanese music was just a copy of, at the time, I felt like it was just a copy of basically Western music, And, but in time I realized that Japanese music actually is pretty good, I was wrong, basically, And that's the thing about life is, you're wrong sometimes, So you might be wrong about what you're thinking, So I want you to use this episode to kind of think about what you've been doing. And so, I studied Japanese pop culture a little bit. I started asking people, who is that on TV? What's her name? What's his name? What is his story? And people were very happy to tell me. It was super easy, People would be like, because I can't read Japanese, I can only speak, so I had to talk. So I'd be like, who's that guy? And then they'd be like, oh, that's that guy, he's like this. And I realized in their voice, like, they're super excited about this guy, like, this guy is like no joke to them. So I'm like, okay, all right. And then some other guys would be like, oh, this guy here, he's totally different. Like he was popular in the 60s and, now he's still, doing this and he's so funny. And I was like, oh, okay. And, this other guy, oh, he runs a big company too, And I thought, oh, okay, it's relatively interesting, talking about these things. And also along the way, like I said, I realized I was wrong. And I realized that there was actually some good Japanese music. And I love Japanese music now. But it started with this kind of open-mindedness to the news, essentially. Because, when you watch TV, you're basically watching fucking, you're watching like current affairs when you get on TV. That's what you're watching. You're watching current affairs, whether it's the direct news like CNN or one of these WIN or one of these channels, you're watching popular culture, essentially. And you can see what the people are thinking, you can see what people value, you can see what's going on. And if you don't know those things, if you don't know what's going on, like if you're not aware, so I guess I would say to start reading international news. Find a good international news site and start reading that. Instead of reading like, something in your country, like CNN or something. Like, look at something else. There's some great international newspapers. I mean, one relatively unbiased one, it used to be the Christian Science Monitor newspaper. I used to read that a lot. I'm not a Christian Scientist, or I'm not religious at all, but that was a really great journalism. That was really good. They really had some good, great articles, very well thought out, excellent. That kind of thing. There's stuff out there that's actually quite high quality, you know. And even once in a while, you'll see like a shitty news channel will have a really good piece in it. Once in a while. So I learned that my kind of stubbornness about watching the news, my stubbornness about current affairs, let's call it current affairs. And I mean current affairs including everything. Because when I talk about the news, I'm really talking, and if you watch the news, you'll see, you think the news is just like information, but it's not. It's much more than that. It's really what people value. It's what the people are thinking. You can see it in the news. You can see, you know, if one story is featured over the other, you can see where the society's at, right? So you kind of get the values of the people inside these channels, because these channels obviously have to get, you know, they have to get traffic. They have to get viewers, right? For their commercials or whatever, clicks or whatever, if you're whatever medium it is. And so I kind of got this fascination. And so when I moved to China, I did the same thing. When I studied Chinese, I watched Chinese news, and I learned, you know, the name of the reporters, the name of the singers, the name of the kind of the superstar entrepreneurs, you know, the Elon Musks, you know, kind of thing. And this dog just loves it today, because this is so low tide, you guys can't believe it. Like, this is unbelievable. All the way over there is the way it is. And then this reminds me of the power of physics. You know, the water is so heavy, but it moves every day. The moon just pulls it, you know. Gravity is fucking fascinating to me. Yeah. I don't know why gravity, it's just so simple, so dead ass simple. You know, and so powerful, and so invisible, so hard to understand. We finally understand gravity, but it's taken us forever. But okay, so you can read. So let me think. What the ideas so far? One of them is to double check yourself about being too stubborn. And you know, I just tell you, I talked to a guy the other day, and it was funny because I didn't even mention it, because I had made this news episode before, and it just wasn't right, so I didn't upload it. And then I said to this guy something about the storms coming or whatever, and then he said, "Oh, I don't read the news." And I remember I just looked at him. He just looked boring to me. I mean, to not know what's going on, it's like it's there's something missing there. I saw this when I was studying Japanese, like that if you don't have what's going on. See, the thing is, humans are, like, most of the things we do are social. Like, most of your skills, most of the money you make, most of the success that you have, or the failure that you have, is due to your social skills. That's most of it. Technical skills is just a small thing. You can easily hire somebody with high technical skills, but you can't easily hire someone with high social skills. So the learning this kind of stuff really helps you in your social department, you know, your ability to be social, and your skill at, I guess, being in the flow of life kind of thing, you know. Like, you're not like, when you watch this and you start to look around the world, you'll start to realize there's people who are kind of like socially retarded, where they're kind of out of it, you know, like they just kind of don't get it. They're just kind of sitting there like a log. You don't want to be like that. That is not a good thing. That is not a good thing. And I know a lot of guys, they think that it doesn't matter, but it does matter, because see, in the end, like I said, most things that humans do is social. And what happens is your social network, okay, your social ability is the biggest, factor in your health as an elderly person. You can have cancer, but if you have tons of friends, they've done studies, and they survive cancer much better. If you are the type who has very few friends and you're young, dude, This is no joke. Take it very seriously, because as you get older, it's going to get more serious. It's going to get more and more serious. And you don't want that. I mean, here's your chance, right? Here's our chance. Our chance to improve and see these impossible to see things. You know, I hope I'm bringing this out here, is how important this is. And knowing what's going on, it's part of the lubrication of communication, the lubrication of society. So it's just kind of like, it's not that it's important. It's not like I'm saying like, oh, it's really important. What's important is what it allows you to do. It allows you to have more friends. It allows you to laugh. It allows you to kind of guess things too, because what happens is if you read the news for a long time, and choose your channels wisely too, or I shouldn't say channels. Don't be so channel. Don't be a channel Nazi. I recommend. Just, you know, I will read a CNN article once in a while. If there's not every single article is biased in CNN, not every single. There'll be say a technology article, or there'll be something else. I basically just go to like Google, news.google.com, and then what that does, the algorithm, it learns what I like, so it tends to give me what I like. Now, of course, that has good and bad in it, and that's part of the reason why I read, you know, totally different channels like, you know, like Le Monde and stuff like that. But in Japanese news, I read a lot of Japanese news, because it's a fresh perspective, you know, for me. Even though I speak Japanese, I'm like, I'm out of the Japanese kind of flow of life right now. So when I see the Japanese perspective on China, on manufacturing, on electric cars, on the Olympics, on coronavirus, on, you know, it's very, very refreshing. You know, you see that different people have different views. Hey, Bruno, how's it going? You loving this? Yeah, you're loving this, aren't you? Yeah, good boy. Yeah, let's cruise around. So let's see here. Let's see. I guess one way to look at it is this way. I don't know if this is a perfect analogy, but I just thought this was kind of, for me, this worked. Okay, so it's a story about search engines, but it's related. It's a method of the methodology that search engines chose is similar to the reading the news, not reading the news debate. Okay, and so Yahoo was the biggest search engine in the world, and nobody thought anybody could compete with them. And there was a bunch. There was Alta Vista. There was quite a few back in the day. But once Yahoo really got going, they were really number one. They were killing it. And Google didn't have a chance, because it's very difficult to unseat a leader in a new field. And Yahoo was on their way. They had a very nice looking page. They had Yahoo News. They had there was a great home page. You know, it was like someplace you just go every day. But Google, they had a different. They weren't just a competitor. They had a different perspective. So here's the perspective difference. It's quite interesting, actually. Yahoo's basic way of looking at search was the same as the Dewey Decimal System. Basically the same as, oh wow, look at this, his motor out here. Must have fallen off a boat like 1,000,000 years ago. Cool. No way. Nice. You can actually see inside the motor. Oh yeah, it's one of those outboard. Oh dude, sweet. Dude, sweet. Oh man, look at that. Okay. Yeah, nice. So they basically, what Yahoo's perspective was this. I had a website in 1999, and I had to register with Yahoo. I had to register with, basically, I had to choose a category for my website, and I had to register. So I signed in. I was looking for the right category. I had a headhunting company, so I went to consulting, and there was no consulting. So I'm like, okay. Then there was business. Okay, business. Okay. And then the only choice that was similar was finance. But really, my website was not finance at all. It was executive search recruiting, right? But there was no category for me, right? And this is one of the problems with human designed categories, which is what Yahoo was doing. Yahoo was saying, okay, humans are smart, humans know what thing is, that's a boat, this is the ocean, you know, these are rocks, you know, just put it into a category and then we will find it. Google had a different perspective. So Google looked at it based on relevance. And so what Google did was, Google said, okay, We don't know what it is. There was no way. So basically Yahoo, I chose like a totally off target category, but that was the closest thing. And that's basically what humanity had until that point. Like nothing was ever perfect. There was never a perfect section for anything, you know. And it wasn't just for my website, it was for everything. Like there was just millions, already information was exploding, you know, back in the 90s. And there just wasn't enough categories. Like there's, you know, nobody, you just couldn't, it was not possible, right? So how could you go any farther than that, right? Yahoo definitely chose the right way, right? They're gonna win. Well, what happened was Google said, no, we're gonna go on based on relevance. So Google's, and this is the good side of Google. This is when Google didn't hire anybody except PhDs. They were not biased in any way. They were completely, absolutely scientific company at this point. And so they said, okay, well, we're going to do it based on relevance. So we're not going to call it a house. We're not going to call it a mountain or a tree. We're going to see what people do. So for example, some guy is looking for something, and then we're going to see how long he stays on the site. We're going to see how many links he clicked on it. We're going to see how many things he scrolls down. And we're going to see what links he goes to after that. And then we won't even, like, at that point, won't even label it. We'll just keep watching people that come to the site over and over, millions of people, or thousands of people, whatever it is in the case. And eventually, a category will essentially form around this page based on the way that people act with this page. Okay, so that was the way they did it. So it took a lot longer for Google to get smart. It took a lot longer. But when Google did get smarter, it just blew Yahoo away, because in the end, Google's original kind of motto was to give you what you want. That was really what their main goal was, to you search for something and you fucking find it. That's it. You're gonna find it better on Google than anywhere else. That's it. That was their main goal. It was so simple. It was like they were doing the best for the client, because that's what we wanted. We wanted accurate search engines. You know, you search for something and you get the wrong thing. You know, you end up with a disease that's the same name as a car, and you get all these cars. You wanted the disease, right? So Google's algorithm, over time, as it was updated millions of times, not millions, but a lot of times, probably daily, 5 times, it finally got to the point where it could separate the most subtle distinctions based on the grammar that you used in the search. And so, of course, Yahoo died. And I think that it's similar to, so the basic philosophy of Yahoo was, and you might even still have this philosophy today. If you do, it's out of date, like big time. But a lot of people still have the philosophy, there's too much information out there. There's just too much information. You have to limit it. You have to limit it. You have to categorize it. That was Yahoo's belief was the same as every human on the planet, which was basically there's too much information. Now Google had a different perspective. Google said, throw it at us. Bring it on. Bring on the extra information. Bring on the max. We will sort through it and we will make sense out of it. And that's what they did. That's exactly what they did. They went through the world's information. They were not afraid of the information. They were not limiting the information. They were not categorizing. They were watching you and watching what you did, how much you liked it, how long you stayed, how much you enjoyed it, how much you read, right? How many times you shared it with somebody. Bruno, come on, Bruno. Oh, dang it. I lost his leash. I gotta go back and find his leash. Oh, this is funny. His leash dropped out of my pocket somewhere. Oh no. Oh no. Where the heck was it? Oh no. I usually put it around my neck. I should have done that. Oh well. We're going to New York today, by the way. Oh, that's funny. So oh, you guys are gonna get the same view twice. That's funny. No, any reason to do a better walk, really, as far as I'm concerned. So I want you to think more like an algorithm. Don't be afraid of information. Don't be afraid that it's going to bother you emotionally. Like a lot of people, the reason why they don't read the news is because they say, well, they often won't admit it, guys won't admit it, but they actually get all angry. That's emotional. Bruno, come on. Bruno, come on. We gotta go find your leash. Yeah, come on, boy. Good boy. Yeah, let's go out here. Yeah. Yeah. Good boy. Yeah, let's find your leash. Okay, so be the algorithm. I did this earlier episode, and Chime said, be the algorithm after you listen to me. I'm like, that's it. Be the algorithm, right? Be the algorithm. Don't be afraid of information. But what Google does, or I just want to take it away. I'm not like selling Google here. I like the idea, okay, of the way that they looked at something, and like it was like super successful, okay? This one idea is what made them what they are. This idea. So you, as a social human being, as a person on this planet walking around this earth, you want friends, you want to be relevant, you want to be able to discuss things with people, you want to laugh, you want to be part of things. You don't want to be the social outcast, the fringes of society, the outer planet in the solar system. You know, you want to be, if you want to have good health and good friends and good life and money, you really need to think about this, is to be in the flow of life. You know, in the flow, man. Jump into life and know what's going on socially, news, information. What do people value? You don't have to value yourself. You just kind of have to know. You understand, okay, you know, this is a perspective, you know, like the way, like for example, like, you know, China's like so many countries in one, right? It's just, as you travel China, and especially if you really stay there, you know, you realize it's like a million countries. Like, you're going around and totally different cultures. Like, some places is like almost all bread, other places it's types of breads, basically almost like Muslim breads, and then other parts is like all noodles, and there actually isn't that much rice in China. You realize, like, Japan is all rice, but China is not all rice. China, a lot of bread, and a lot of noodles too, tons of noodles. You know, homemade, beautiful, delicious. But I learned this by having an open mind, by traveling, and by listening to people, and by talking, right? I didn't learn this through a book. I learned this, like, I actually know different parts of China. I know they talk differently. I understand a lot of the way, like I can understand, like, say 40% of pretty much most Chinese dialects. Just because if you speak Mandarin, you do understand a lot. I maybe, some of them maybe not 40, but at least 30. You know what's going on. Like, you know what they're talking about, basically. You might not know exactly, but you know what they're talking about. And that came from traveling, and from being open, and from listening, and from being in the flow of life, right? In the flow of life. That's what you want to be, in the flow of life. That's what I'm talking about. Talking about things, being social is not a joke, man. It's not some stupid thing that doesn't matter. Hell no, man. It totally matters. It totally matters. Being social, having friends, you know, being able to laugh with a group of people, being able to joke around and support someone who's having a difficult time. And here's another way it matters, is when you know what's going on. Like, I have a friend who doesn't read the news, right? And so when I went to visit her in Japan, she had a son, right? And he was into 3D printing. He was interested in 3D printing. And I read a lot. And when 3D printing was popular, I was quite interested, right? So I went to the first 3D printing, the place that they had the first 3D printer in China. I went into the company, I took a train, it took a long ways. I went out and saw it, but that came from the news. Is I realized, oh man, 3D printing's coming up, right? And ever since then, I've been interested in 3D printing, because that first day I got quite a nice introduction, right? Because I not only got to see it, I met the engineers and stuff, and I got to talk to them. And so I got kind of a unique perspective. And I was one of the first people out there, so like it wasn't like they were, what do you call it? They weren't like tired of people coming out there. They were like, oh, they were like, you're coming out here all the way here to see what? I'm like, the 3D printer, I'm fascinated. What is it? You know, what's going to be next? Like, what's going to be the next, material you're going to use. Like now you're using this cheap plastic. What's going to be next? And they're like, well, we're going to try to use a more stronger plastic. Here's what we're thinking of, you know. And they started to show me, and it all came from the news. It all came from kind of being in the flow of things. So if you're looking for a new job, you want to be reading a lot of news. You want to be finding out what's going on. You don't want to be like lost. Well, no, if you know exactly what you want, like if you're trying to be a rocket scientist and you're really trying to get into SpaceX or something, that's a different thing. But if you're not sure, if you're like, oh yeah, I want something new. I want to change my life. Like I feel like I've kind of reached a max in this particular whatever, and I want to go to the next level. You know, then you want to be you want to know what's going on. And even if you are a rocket scientist, you probably at some point, you probably want to, you now this is your profession, and you want to be more social with people who aren't rocket scientists, right? So it never hurts. The other thing you can do is you can read tech news. Tech news is great. If you go to news.google.com and then start hitting on the technology link, they'll give you a lot of great stuff. And like I said, the algorithm gets smarter over time. So yeah, be the algorithm and think of news as a lubricant to social communication. Not as a what do you call it? It's like you want to be somebody who people want to talk to. Someone who kind of can put some perspective, because this is what happens over time. As you get older, and as you educate yourself, you become an irreplaceable person, really. Because you don't need to just read today's news. You've read, you know what's going on for like decades in the past, and so you can put things together for people. You're like, I see this new technology, but I just don't think it's gonna. I'm not getting the feeling it's really catching on. There's something wrong with it, Like I felt that way about 3D movies. I said right away, I don't think these are going to go. I just don't think these are going to catch on, and they didn't. But it was some kind of instinct I had from watching all these other technologies, and I was watching the way that people responded to it. I feel the same way about what is it called, virtual reality sex. A lot of people were excited about that. I just don't think. A friend of mine had it, so I watched a video. It was a virtual reality sex, and I just thought, this isn't sexy. Like this is not what. This is like Playboy was sexy. It was paper. Paper worked. But virtual reality, there's something fake about it. It doesn't work. It doesn't feel erotic to me. So I don't think it's going to succeed, right? So I'm not going to buy the latest virtual reality machine for anything. Not just sex, but I just don't see it as I don't think it's going to catch on, basically. But that comes from experience, right? So build your base, build your social base, build your knowledge, and you see the world from a viewpoint of curiosity. Curiosity about people. And if something is divisive and retarded, like just skip it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about some totally okay, well, let's say you're watching something that's totally biased. Let's say I was in the embassy recently and they had a CNN on. It was like a really biased story. And I just thought, this is interesting in the sense that what is the bias here and what is wrong with this? And I started logically thinking about it. I said, I think the problem with this is that is this and this and this, and I kind of logically broke it down in my mind. So my mind wasn't hating, it was just like logic. It was like, I was like, yeah, I don't like this, but why do I not like this? What is the reason? Because you have to be able to explain yourself in this world, right? So what is it that is going on? Because it's actually harder than you think to do this. It's easy just to say, oh, this is stupid, right? But it's hard to say they're playing on this human weakness. They're playing on this human failing here, and this particular fact is not true, and so they're twisting it in a way that hides the true nature of what they're really saying, and they've already done this before and been caught. I already went through this whole thing, and then I understood what they were doing in that article. So it wasn't just like a mass of emotion, So if you do find yourself being forced to watch something that is, just inflammatory, you can take another perspective on it. You can take a perspective of, I'm going to figure this out so that I could talk in a very rational way without anger and explain to a child or anybody else, let's say a foreigner who didn't know this topic, and I could just break it down. And like, I think that even the fake news is interesting to me, because the way that it is structured and the way that I look at fake news with curiosity, because I'm like, what is fake here? Like, a lot of stuff is real. Like they used to say, I forget if it was in the Bible or an old saying was like, basically like, the devil uses a lot of truth, right? And then, mostly truth, and then just twists it one way. And that's kind of what I see of fake news. A lot of it is like that. It starts with a false premise, right? It starts with a misrepresentation or a false premise. And I like to get in there, and once in a while to see even a very inflammatory, dishonest news article, just so that I can see, what is going on today. Like, how are people being manipulated? Like, how is this working? What are they doing? Like, what is the solution? The solution is to see it for what it is, and just to see that, hey, the problem is this original story here, this video, misrepresented what happened in this complex situation. I believe that. And so that led to this, and led to that, and led to that. And I don't want to do that in my life. Like, I don't want to get all fired up and send a bunch of links to people and then later regret it. If you find yourself like sending links to people and then like later finding out, like Snopes.com, they're not true, see, that's not good. You don't want to be that person that is out of life. Be the person that's, now if you're busy and everything and you don't have time to read the news now, that's fine. Just be aware that the social lubricant is current affairs. And a current affair could be as much as, hey, the weather's nice, the storm, last night there was a big storm, this is the end of the storm now, this wind, the tail of the storm, it was based in Montreal, I heard, the epicenter, but you can talk about that. That's news. That's news. The storm that passed through Boston, that's news, and you want to know what's going on, And then today I have a pretty good perspective, and I'm going to go ahead and learn a little more before I leave. It's interesting. And we're going to head up to New York. And so I will see you guys. Our next video will definitely be in New York City. New York City. All right. So I hope that's been helpful. For me, this is to me, this is important. I don't know if I've done a great job explaining it. But I like to be able to be part of things, understand what's going on. A lot of times when I leave a country and I don't come back for, like, say, a decade, I'm out of it. Like, I don't know what's going on anymore. And that's a terrible feeling. I'm like, oh man, I don't even know what's going on anymore. Like, who's doing what? Which one is, what's taking over what? And what's going on? And what's the latest development? And through these things too, you can find great business opportunities. Great business opportunities. Is not hiding away from the current affairs of various people around the world, current technologies, government things. I guess maybe I'll say the last thing is, take it more as a study rather than an emotional news thing. If you can do that, if you can see it as a study. All right, guys, take it easy, and thanks for listening.